Story 1. On a dark and stormy night, I found myself driving alone on a desolate road. The rain poured down and the wind howled, creating an eerie atmosphere. As I continued down the road, my car suddenly sputtered and came to a halt. I tried to start it again, but it was no use. My car had broken down in the middle of nowhere. Feeling a sense of unease, I decided to wait in my car for help to arrive. Minutes turned into hours, and the darkness outside seemed to grow thicker with each passing moment. Just as I was beginning to lose hope, I saw a figure emerge from the darkness. It was a man, walking towards my car. As he got closer, I could see that he was a creepy-looking man with a hunched back and a twisted smile. He tapped on my window, and I reluctantly rolled it down. "Need some help, friend?" he asked, his voice sending shivers down my spine. Reluctantly, I agreed, and he began asking me strange and unsettling questions. "Where are you headed? Do you have any family? What's your favorite color?" His questions seemed to have no rhyme or reason, and I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. After what felt like an eternity, the man finished his interrogation and began to work on my car. As he tinkered with the engine, the darkness around us seemed to intensify, and I could hear the sound of distant screams in the night. I wanted to run, to escape from this nightmare, but I was paralyzed with fear. Finally, the man stood up and wiped his hands on a rag. "There you go, good as new," he said, his voice dripping with malice. I thanked him, but he just smiled and walked away, disappearing into the night. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The road ahead seemed to stretch on forever, and the darkness was closing in around me. I tried to turn on my headlights, but they wouldn't work. I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare with no way out. Just as I was about to lose all hope, I saw a glimmer of light in the distance. A gas station, my only chance for survival. I pulled in, and as I stepped out of my car, I could feel the weight of the darkness lifting from my shoulders. The attendant looked at me with concern. "Are you all right, sir?" he asked. I nodded, unable to find the words to describe what I had just been through. As I drove away from the gas station, I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to me that night. Was it just a figment of my imagination? Or had I truly encountered something supernatural? I may never know the answer, but one thing is for certain. I will never drive alone at night again. Story 2. Again, it was a dark and stormy night as I left my office, exhausted from another long day of work. The rain poured down and the streets were empty. I desperately needed a ride home, so I hailed a taxi passing by. Little did I know that this would be the beginning of a nightmarish journey. A taxi pulled over and I quickly got in, grateful for the shelter from the rain. As I settled into the back seat, I noticed something off about the driver. He had a silent and eerie presence, with a creepy smile that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to strike up a conversation, but he didn't respond. His eyes remained fixed on the road ahead, never once glancing in the rearview mirror. I started to feel uneasy as the taxi driver took the wrong turn, heading down a dimly lit and unfamiliar street. I asked him where we were going, but he continued to ignore me. Panic began to rise within me as we entered a dark tunnel, the only source of light coming from the flickering street lamps. Suddenly, I heard a blood-curdling scream echoing through the tunnel. The sound was so intense it pierced through the rain and thunder. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as the taxi driver's smile grew wider, his eyes reflecting a sinister delight. I tried to open the door and escape, but it was locked from the inside. The screaming continued, growing louder and more agonizing with each passing second. I covered my ears, desperate to block out the horrifying sound. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever, and I could feel myself losing consciousness, overwhelmed by fear and dread. When I woke up, I was lying on the cold, damp ground. The rain had stopped and the sun was beginning to rise. I looked around, trying to make sense of my surroundings. I was in the middle of a construction site, surrounded by rubble and debris. A group of workers spotted me and rushed over to help. They told me they had found me unconscious in the tunnel, but there was no sign of the taxi or the driver. I couldn't believe what had happened. It felt like a twisted nightmare, but the bruises and cuts on my body were a painful reminder that it was all too real. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that something evil was at work in that taxi. The memory of the silent, smiling driver and the screams in the tunnel haunt me, a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places. Story 3. In a small town draped in oppressive darkness, Olivia and I were just an ordinary couple leading a mundane life. One fateful night, the two of us found ourselves at a friend's house, attending a party that stretched into the late hours. As we bid our farewells and stepped out into the frigid night, little did we know that the course of our lives was about to be thrust into the realm of the macabre. The streets, devoid of life, were cloaked in a thick fog that clung to the air, obscuring our vision. I, slightly inebriated, fumbled for my car keys in my pocket while Olivia, trying to ward off the chill, wrapped her arms around herself. After what felt like an eternity, I finally located the keys and we began our trek towards our parked car a few blocks away. An unshakable unease settled upon us as we traversed the desolate streets, a silence broken only by the distant barks of a lonely dog that seemed to echo with unsettling foreboding. Olivia clutched my arm tightly, her breath visible in the cold night air. We quickened our pace, eager to escape the eerie stillness that surrounded us. Abruptly, a figure materialized from the shadows. A man in ragged clothing, his face obscured by a dirty hood. His eyes devoid of life bore into us, freezing us in our tracks. "Excuse me? Do you need any help?" I stammered, my voice betraying a nervous tremor. The man offered no response but instead took a deliberate step closer. Olivia gasped, and without a second thought I seized her hand, and we fled as if pursued by unseen specters. We reached our car, breathless and heart-pounding. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Finally, I managed to unlock the door, and we hastily sought refuge inside, slamming the door shut behind us. As I started the engine, we peered out of the windows, half expecting the mysterious man to still be standing there. To our bewilderment, he had vanished as though swallowed by the night itself. Relieved, we began our journey home in somber silence. The events of the night lingered in our minds, casting a shadow over the sense of normalcy we once knew. Upon arriving home, we rushed inside, locking the door behind us. We found solace in the dim glow of the fireplace, its flickering flames providing the only semblance of warmth in the cold night. "What was that?" Olivia whispered, her voice barely audible above the crackling of the fire. I shook my head, unable to find words to articulate the inexplicable encounter. We sat there for what felt like hours, the only sound permeating the room being the rhythmic cadence of our own breathing. As the night wore on and the clock ticked towards the witching hour, we decided to retire to bed. However, just as we were about to settle into an uneasy slumber, a faint scratching sound emanated from the front door. Dread gripped us and we exchanged terrified glances. With trepidation, I rose from the bed and made my way towards the source of the disturbance. As I opened the front door, a gust of wind extinguished the flames in the fireplace, plunging the room into darkness. In the obscurity, a shadowy figure stood on our doorstep. The same man we had encountered earlier, his eyes now glowing with otherworldly luminescence. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice a mere whisper. The man offered no verbal reply but instead raised his hand, revealing a small, tattered piece of paper in blood-red ink. The ominous words were scrawled, "You're not safe here?" With that chilling proclamation, he vanished into the abyss of the night, leaving Olivia and me in a state of shock and terror. From that night onward, our lives became a harrowing odyssey into the unknown, a nightmarish tale with no resolution in sight. The fear of the mysterious man's return haunted our every waking moment, casting a veil over the once familiar contours of our existence. And so, we found ourselves trapped in a perpetual nightmare, where the boundary between reality and the supernatural blurred, and the shadows held secrets that eluded even the bravest souls. The end? Or perhaps just the beginning of a terror that would forever cling to the fabric of our lives?